Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our visitors edition of the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. With us today is the radio play-by-play voice of the Wisconsin Badgers, Matt Lepay. But let's get it rolling with my view from Section 17, as we always do. It's already been a wild week in college football. 4 games in the SEC have been canceled, and Ohio State Maryland was called off on Wednesday. Our opponent this week is coming off 2 weeks of not playing or practicing. From week to week, things can change, so let's enjoy Week 4 of Michigan football, even though it hasn't been what we wanted. I'm not sure what to expect this week. We have injuries on the offensive line, Aiden Hutchinson is gone for the season, and we have other dinged-up players. We're not getting any injury updates, so as has been the case this season, we'll have to wait and see who's in uniform Saturday night. After only 3 weeks, my expectations for this team have changed dramatically. We are not a contender, so let's start playing for the future. We need to get as many young guys game action and reps as possible, and just tell them to let it rip. They're going to make mistakes, but the only way to learn is to get out there and compete. In the next 5 weeks, we need to see some leadership evolve on this team and get out there and play with some grit and fire. Despite the lopsided losses to Sparty and IU, I really still believe we have plenty of talent. Right now, it's a lack of confidence and poor fundamentals that need attention. My guest today says Wisconsin opened the season against Illinois with a nearly perfect performance. Will they pick up where they left off? As he said, after 2 weeks of no practice, it's highly unlikely. Up next is the radio play-by-play voice of Wisconsin football, Matt Lepay, on this week's Visitors Edition of the Michigan Man, so stay with us. Here with us on our show is the radio play-by-play voice of the Wisconsin Badgers, Matt Lepay. Matt, it's been a couple of years. Great to have you back with us.
Good to be back. Good to be talking a little football. At least fingers crossed that there will be football this weekend.
Amen. We are hoping so. Everything looks good right now, and it was, of course, great news on Monday morning when we heard the Badgers were cleared to play on Saturday. And I am quite certain the team is ready to get back in action, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. There's no doubt. I think they did say in their release on Monday they're going to continue to monitor things here. So as you and I were talking off air, I'll exhale Saturday night when the ball's in the air. But the players, there's no question that I've heard from a few of them already. They're excited. There's that old line when you're injured and you have to miss a lot of time. You realize how much you missed the game. Well, there's injuries and now COVID. where people who aren't infected by it still have to miss time. So they're grateful to be back and hoping they can resume their season and be able to play the rest of their scheduled games. But I think they've learned that cliche about one day or 1 week at a time, that really applies this year.
It certainly does. And with these 2 weeks off, what, if anything, could the team and the staff do to, sort of stay game ready?
Well, it was a lot of Zoom meetings like the rest of the world. A lot of that, players were really exercising on their own. There were several days where they were really not even allowed to be in the workout facility. A lot of the guys, anyway. So they were, as they were describing, it's a lot of guys. The weather was nice last week, so there was a lot of running outside on their own or doing push-ups in their apartment, that type of thing. But they were preparing for Nebraska, and then it was about the middle of the week, Tuesday or Wednesday of that week, where they shut it down, and then they started preparations, at least via virtual meetings, for Purdue. And then last Tuesday, that game was canceled. So they've been going at least through some level of mental preparation. I know they were thrilled last Friday and Saturday, to get back on the field, do some conditioning work in groups, and then to be back on the practice field Monday especially, when they could gather and get into a game routine. I think they were all very happy to be there. So
this week they were allowed a normal game week practice schedule?
Yeah, they're starting on Monday, which is with Wisconsin, and I'm sure with any number of programs, it's not a heavy day, but you get introduced on the field to some of what the opponent does. And so that's when it started with the players who are actually cleared to play. They've had a number of guys. They don't identify, like most schools, they don't identify specifically who, but there are no doubt a number of guys were out and will continue to be. But they feel cautiously optimistic, at least at the beginning of the week, that they were starting to stabilize in terms of the number of positive tests. But I think if there's one thing we've learned about this virus, it's pretty sneaky. So everybody's holding his breath, keeping fingers crossed that they can remain in good shape and be good to go Saturday night.
Well, when last we saw the Badgers, they were pummeling Illinois in the season opener, led by redshirt freshman quarterback Graham Mertz. He had a huge day, 20 of 21. He set a Badger record, 17 completions in a row, and then the next day tests positive for COVID. Talk about what kind of quarterback he is, Matt, and if he will be ready to go on Saturday night.
Well, the second one first, we don't know, and I know that's not a satisfying answer. He'll be allowed to start to do more things, team-oriented things, late in the week. He's at the beginning of the week. He's in that ramp-up period as part of the 21-day protocol to make sure the heart is working the way it's supposed to work. The unknown of this virus, but he, in a perfect world, could have a day or two of full team activities, but they don't know. I mean, there's hope that he could be able to go. In the meantime, Danny Vandenboom would probably be getting himself ready as well. But as for the type of quarterback Mertz is, very highly regarded, probably the highest regarded recruit, highest rated recruit to come in to Wisconsin as a freshman. He's from Overland Park, Kansas, national recruit. A lot of the power programs were after him, even after he had verbally committed, which you're fair game for that, but he stayed firm to his commitment to Wisconsin. He's a guy with a very good arm, an ability to throw the deep ball. Saw that a little bit in the Illinois game a few weeks ago now. Mobile enough, I think. He's able to pull the ball down and run and get some things done that way. He can keep plays alive if he's flush from the pocket and still look downfield. So he seems like he has all the tools. I know there's a lot of excitement here after a grand total of one start, where he was nearly flawless, there's no doubt. But the longer he goes, he'll face better teams, and teams will have tape on him. So it'll be interesting to see the progression of his career. But there's no doubt the kid is very, very gifted.
Well, for Michigan fans who aren't up to speed on the Badgers offense, let's talk about some of the players we'll see on Saturday night, some of the key guys, starting with the running back crew. And we know Jonathan Taylor's gone.
Will Garrett Groshek and Nakia Watson be getting the bulk of the carries this week?
Yeah, well, you figure that those guys would. There's a young man, Isaac Arendo, who's very highly regarded for his speed. He was introduced into some games late last season. Jalen Berger, another highly recruited player out of New Jersey. It'd be interesting as the year goes along to see how much he could play. But I think a guy who could be, I don't know if I would use the term workhorse. This is kind of at least the feeling is it would be a tailback by committee as opposed to Jonathan Taylor, who was a great running back here. They have a lot of really good running backs, but not proven to be great necessarily at this level. But I think Nakia Watson would be the first guy to watch. A young man out of Texas, big, strong kid, runs pretty well. Has played some. You get overshadowed when you're in the same room as Jonathan Taylor, but he's someone that you certainly want to keep your eye on Saturday night.
Well, the offensive line lost 2 starters from last year, but overall still a veteran group led by Cole Van Lanen and Logan Bruss. This is a very good O-line, isn't it?
Yeah, they think it can be, and they've always but they valued versatility here, be able to play at various spots to get. As the cliche goes, your 5 best on the field. But there's no question that they look to Cole Van Lanen to be the anchor, the leader there, and it's a role that he really embraces. I talked to him about that this week. I think he, under any circumstances, he would. Under the circumstances of this season, it's even more important, and I think he really embraces the role of being a guy who can lead the others in the offensive line, the other 4 who are out there with them. Or there's a couple of young offensive tackles who I would imagine pick his brain on a regular basis, one out of the state of Wisconsin, another out of Michigan, Logan Brown, redshirt freshman, who they believe can be very good. So, as is the case, I'm sure, in Michigan or any of the other really successful programs, there's a culture that's built where the younger players get some advice, get some tips from the older guys, and now Van Lanen, who had been through that as a student, is a little bit more in the teacher role as he gets late in his career.
Tight end Jake Ferguson is back, had a really nice game against Illinois, but the wideouts as a group are pretty young and unproven, aren't they?
Well, a couple of them are experienced. Danny Davis has been around for quite a while. Kendrick Pryor has been around for quite a while. There is a young receiver, a couple of them, and one in particular who even the guy's teammates have been singing their praises throughout the course of the training camp. His name is Chimere Dike. He's out of Waukesha, Wisconsin. That's just outside of Milwaukee. Really is someone who they know can run well. They really marvel at his football IQ, very good student of the game, asked a lot of questions. And then another guy out of Grand Rapids, matter of fact, Stephon Bracey is a redshirt freshman, a state track champ over there, and he's someone that you could see in at least in the kick return game, but someone who I would imagine will continue to build some confidence and build some reps rotating with the wide receiver spot. So, yes, you are right in the regards that there are a couple of very promising young guys, but they also rely on guys like Danny Davis and Kendrick Pryor, a pair of seniors, to kind of anchor that group.
Well, timing, Matt, is so important on the offensive side of the ball. Being rusty has to be a concern after 2 weeks off, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, especially in a stop-and-start nature of the season. I mean, it's not like a bye week where you practice during the week. I mean, they hit the pause button on their football activities. So it was, nearly 2 weeks without being together to practice. Now, everybody has gone through the stop-and-start nature of summer conditioning, and then fall camp in August, and everything was stopped. I mean, it's just another disruption. So that will definitely be something to watch. And quite frankly, it'll be, and we'll find out together Saturday night who's available. As you know, in college, you don't have to list your injuries or your unavailable list. So that's something you kind of find out on the fly on Saturday night. Hopefully, for Wisconsin's sake, it won't involve too many guys who would be in the rotation, but you don't know.
Well, over on the other side of the ball, the Badger defense missing a few pieces from last year, but it is a very experienced group, one of the best defenses in the country last year. Linebacker Zach Bond, Chris Orr, they're gone. But Jack Sanborn is back, and he is a heck of a linebacker, isn't he?
Yeah, I think with all the great work that was turned in by Vaughn and Orr, and it was terrific. They had terrific seasons. Sanborn, it's the nature of the position, too, at Mike linebacker, but he led the team in tackles last year, really started to emerge, and played well in the Illinois game as well. There wasn't anybody defensively that had necessarily eye-popping statistics individually, but the good news and all of that, they weren't on the field all that much. They were getting a lot of 3 and outs. They were turning Illinois over, a couple times, but Sanborn is a very hard-nosed linebacker, which you would expect out of that position. Junior out of Deer Park, Illinois. They feel pretty good about their front. Guys like Keanu Benton, a sophomore, Isaiah Loudermilk, a fifth-year senior guy out of Kansas. They feel like they have some depth there. They feel like they have some depth in the secondary. Another player to watch is an outside linebacker. He's a true freshman from Hawaii, Nick Herbig, a 4-star player, went to St. Louis School, the very highly regarded prep program down there, and he showed in the first game. They thought he could. They view him as somebody who has a chance to be really good, and you must be, as a true freshman, lining up with that defense, and he lined up, and he fared pretty well against Illinois.
Well, you mentioned that Badger defensive line, and last year, Michigan fans remember this all too well, the Badgers handled a good Michigan front last year. 4 of those guys are in the NFL and had a horrible game up in Madison. Those 3 guys in the trenches are the heart and soul of this defense, aren't they?
They certainly can be, and with depth behind it, with guys like I mentioned, Benton and Loudermilk, Garrett Rand, Matt Henningsen, Bryson Williams, that's some pretty decent depth they have there on the defensive line. And I think what Jim Leonard, the defensive coordinator, he's really been able to mix and match really well. I think you got 2 coordinators with really good reputations, Don Brown for a number of years, Jim Leonard, younger in the role, hasn't been a defensive coordinator for nearly as long as Don Brown, but he's really establishing himself. Had a very good NFL career. It was a walk-on here and turned into an All-American. So I think it does create some pretty good chess matches, what Michigan does defensively versus Wisconsin's offense, and the same thing with Wisconsin's defense versus what Michigan wants to do offensively. I think it's a pretty intriguing thing to watch.
Well, in that secondary, I know safety Eric Burrell and corner Caesar Williams are back. Are there any concerns with that group? I know there's been a very small sample, 1 game with Illinois, but how do they shape up in your eyes?
No, they feel pretty good about the group, again, with the area of depth. It's to the point where a guy named Scott Nelson from Detroit, who hurt his knee in the first game last season and ended his season, and they still fared very well in the secondary. He's back. He adds more depth to what they're doing back there. Faion Hicks, Deontay Burton, Rashad Wildgoose. It's all again. There might not be like one spectacular statistical type of player back there, but collectively, they feel pretty good. It'll be a good test against the speed, the talent. I really believe that Michigan has at the receiver positions. But again, I think they feel pretty good. Now, it's all relative, not just with Wisconsin, but with anybody. You're an outbreak away, and depending on what position group gets hit, that depth really does get tested. But I know in the secondary they do feel pretty good, and Jim has been good about this, about using a lot of guys back there in the secondary, and I would imagine we'll see more of the same this year.
Well, in most of the preseason magazines, the Badgers were favored to win the West, make the trip to Indianapolis in December. And the good news is, even with the COVID outbreak, it is still all there right in front of them if they can get these 6 games in, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, but again, you kind of hold your breath because they can't have another game canceled, either from their problem or the team they're playing, because then they would fall under the minimum unless there's a major issue throughout the conference, and then the average number of games drops. But they do. I think what was discouraging, beyond the obvious, just not being able to play the games, is that they beat Illinois handily. Now we know Illinois is struggling. It looks like it could be a very long year for the Illini, but the fact is, Wisconsin played very well, had only 15 yards in penalties. There was the one turnover, and it was really credit to Illinois for knocking the ball out, and Illinois' one touchdown was a defensive score. But really, Wisconsin played pretty close to error-free ball, especially for a first game. And I think in a year like this, the unknown is magnified tenfold as to what you're going to get in a first game. So, they felt like they had something going, and they were eager to go to Nebraska. They were eager to host Purdue. Obviously, those games didn't happen. So, no matter how many games this team ends up playing, they feel like they have the makings of being a very good football team once again. They're just happy and hopeful that they'll be able to play this week and be able to go uninterrupted the rest of the way.
Well, I wanted to talk about Coach Chryst for just a moment. He's in his fifth year as head coach of Wisconsin, 53-16, great record. Sometimes I think, is it just me, or does he not get the respect nationally he deserves for what an incredible job he's done in Madison?
Yeah, he probably doesn't, and he's perfectly fine with that because he is there are various ways to go about your business, but he is as low key as it gets with with media. He's the "hey, look at me" coach. And look, in our business, we don't mind those guys too, right? They can be very entertaining, but that's just not his nature. He's the players know that he really cares about them. I've talked to a couple of them specifically. I said, what could you tell us that maybe people don't really understand about Paul Chryst? And he says he makes a point to ask about you, not just, how do you feel about this week's game, but, how are you doing? How's the family? Knows everybody, takes the time to talk to every player. I'm sure he didn't invent that. I'm sure he's not the only one, but it's something that the players appreciate far more than how entertaining he might be in a news conference or any other media platform interview. So to your question, probably underrated, but I would say that he really couldn't care less. He loves what he does, and his teams far more often than not go into every game thinking that you got a shot.
He and Jim Harbaugh go back a long time. I think Paul's brother too. But Jim this week went on and on about what a good man he is, what a great coach he is. He just really likes Coach Chryst.
Yeah, and vice versa. I think the families are close, and you're right. Paul's brother Jeep was Harbaugh's offensive coordinator out with the San Francisco 49ers. It's interesting because they're different, right? I mean, if you listen to them in their news conferences or just, things that transpire, during the course of either a season or the recruiting season, they go about things differently. But they do get along because I think at the core, they're both just hardcore football guys. They love the game. I know Paul's idea of a good time for a number of years is getting together with a bunch of coaches with a case of beer and drawing up plays, getting a grease board out. And that I don't know Jim Harbaugh, but it wouldn't surprise me if that would be his idea of a good time as well. So, to see, everybody has a shtick or whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, those two guys get along really well. They just seem like the ultimate football guys, and I think both fan bases are lucky to have Chryst and Harbaugh at their respective schools.
Well, Matt, this Saturday it's going to be strange. Michigan and Wisconsin at night, primetime game. And for the most part, an empty Big House. And for different reasons, it is a huge game for both teams, isn't it?
It is, and it's different this season. It stinks with what is going on. It's obviously the safe route to go, and I fully understand that. But a big lure of college football is having 100,000 plus at the Big House, 80,000 at Camp Randall, so on and so forth. But the game is still the game, and it's it is big for both. I think it's pretty safe to say that Michigan is better than the record. Wisconsin, even though it played extremely well against Illinois, and they believe they're pretty good, it's still an unknown. Even their own players say, look, it's really small sample size. Let's see how this plays out. But it's been fun to have this series go uninterrupted now for the last 5 years, even though they're in different divisions. It's pretty cool, for fans here to see Wisconsin play a program like a Michigan every year. Hopefully Michigan views it much the same. I know there are a couple of other games on the schedule that always carry a little bit more clout, but it's fun, it's huge, and so like you said, hopefully that everything is good to go, and we'll see a good football game on Saturday.
Well, last question for you before we let you get away, Matt. So far this season, Ohio State has been, what we thought Ohio State would be. The rest of the Big Ten, chaos has reigned. It's been an entertaining 3 weeks so far. What teams have surprised you, for better or worse?
I thought Indiana had a chance to be pretty good, but it's been better than I thought because, Indiana has been one of those teams that oftentimes in the bigger games does just enough to lose, right? But the defense, I think, has improved. Michael Penix, and as you guys saw last week, he has a lot of weapons offensively, and he used them very well. They've been, I guess, to me, a bit of a surprise. Purdue, it would have been interesting to see Wisconsin and Purdue match up. David Bell is an outstanding receiver. They've been without Rondale Moore, who, in my opinion, is the most exciting player. When he's healthy, he just hasn't been. Played 4 games last year, but 2 years ago he was electrifying. But they've been a pleasant surprise. Those two, I think, would stand out. And Northwestern, I guess I'm pointing out a couple of teams in the West here with Purdue and Northwestern, what the Wildcats have been able to do, especially defensively. They haven't given up a point in the second half yet. They're doing enough on offense, but defensively, that's what's keeping Fitzgerald's teams in games, which makes sense, being an All-American linebacker that he was. So those are the pleasant surprises. I don't think I pegged Penn State at being 0-3. I was never really drinking the Kool-Aid yet with Nebraska, so I guess I'm not all that surprised that they have struggled so far. I don't think they're all that far away. But Purdue and Indiana, they've probably been the most surprising, and I'd have Northwestern right there with them.
At least it's great to have college football back. It's different, but I'm still enjoying it. I know you are too, and everyone up there in Wisconsin, very glad that they're going to play this week and head down for a primetime game, so I'm looking forward to it. Here with us today is the radio play-by-play voice of the Wisconsin Badgers, Matt Lepay. Matt, thanks for your time. You're always gracious with us. We enjoy the chat, and we look forward to meeting again next year.
All right, good talking to you. Take care.
On Quick Hits today, as I mentioned in the opening, we know Aiden Hutchinson is out for the season and that we have some other players nursing injuries. Who will play on Saturday? We'll find out at 7:30 p.m. in the Big House. Here are some game day facts of interest. Michigan leads this series with 51 wins. We've lost 16 times and tied once. Wisconsin humbled us up in Madison last year on September 21st by a score of 35-14. The first meeting was on October 15, 1892 in Ann Arbor, a 10-6 Michigan win. Paul Christ is in his 5th year as head man in Madison with a record of 53-16. In 8 years as a head coach, his record is 71-35. The Badgers were 10-4 last year, 7-2 in Big Ten play. They finished the season ranked 11th in the AP poll and 13th in the coaches poll. They returned 6 starters on offense, 9 on defense. They ended the season with a loss to Oregon in the Rose Bowl, 28-27. Saturday's game kicks off at 7:30 p.m. and will be broadcast by ABC. The weatherman says temps should be near 40 at kickoff, dropping into the 30s during the game. We should be dry, though. At this point, I'm not even nervous about this game. The way I look at it is, it's another chance for our young guys to play and get better against a very good team. I mean, that's why they came here, for primetime games like this. So let's hope we're better prepared for this week and start fast. We do need some confidence for our young guys, but they've got to get out there and start making their own breaks. Will they? Stay tuned. Thanks again to Badger Radio play-by-play voice Matt Lepay for being our guest today. Next week we'll be back on Tuesday with our Michigan Game Day show. Scheduled guest is beat writer Aaron McMahon from MLive. On Thursday's Visitors Edition, we hope to have Steve Politti, who covers Rutgers for the Newark Star-Ledger. So make sure you join us for that. That will do it for another week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Think victory. Beat Wisconsin. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go Blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!